Hello, I'm Harry Watt at North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. We're hosting the National Firewood Workshop in June 2021. We're focused on Tennessee, but today we're talking to Charlie Vandwartz with US Pride Products. That's a manufacturer of cone splitters for firewood. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you.
Give us a little history here of US Pride and what you guys do.
So US Pride, we manufacture the cone style tree splitters for busting oversized logs down to a processable size or busting chunk wood down and eliminating the swinging of them all or other applications. It started about 15 years ago. I burned wood my whole life and my back said no more. And so I designed this cone splitter for myself, and it worked really well. And then my neighbor wanted one and his neighbor wanted one. And so we went ahead and patented it and then went into full production, and we've been doing this full time ever since.
Well, that is great. A few questions about how do these things work?
So it's a threaded cone. So it's a giant screw that just gets bigger and bigger. And you introduce the tip of the splitter to the log, and it will draw itself into the log. And as it draws itself in, it gets bigger and bigger, pushing the wood apart and splits it open. So it's really introducing the tool to the wood, not the wood to the tool. So you drive up, it mounts on a skid steer, excavator, mini skid. There's various sizes and models we can go over, but it's bringing the tool to it and just letting it screw itself in and bust the log open.
Okay. What's any safety issues involved in cone splitters?
Not really, because the operator is on the machine or in the machine, a long ways away from the actual log, and there is no need for anybody on the ground helping, setting, staging, bringing wood. It works best when it's a one-man operation, one-person operation in the machine. You don't need any help on the ground, so that makes it incredibly safe.
Okay, and the power is coming from the hydraulic system from the excavator or the skid steer, is that right?
Correct, yeah, they're all hydraulically driven. They're all a gearbox driven by hydraulic motor, and that is powered by anything from a mini stand-on skid to a standard skid up to a full-size excavator. We have models for everything. So
from the firewood business point of view, they're going to have a skid steer or something that they can hook this to. So you're just buying the cone and the hoses, is that right?
Yeah, you're buying the power head with the cone, yep. And yeah, they're going to have some kind of a wheel loader, skid steer, something to load that firewood processor. And this will go right, it's a quick attach, it goes right onto that application.
And one question, is the tip replaceable or not?
Yes, it is. The tip is replaceable on all but our biggest model, the big excavator model, which is a little overkill for the firewood industry. That's more for the municipalities and biomass busting full trees. But all the other ones have a replaceable tip on them. And it's 1144 tool steel that's flame hardened.
Okay, well, let me bring up some photos of the various ones you have, because you run a wide variety, and you can tell us, for the firewood producers, what size logs and what do we need to know about it?
Okay.
Well, here you go, Charlie. Tell us about these four models you have.
So this is the we'll start off with the 100 Mini, the HF 100 Mini, and the HF stands for hands-free. We used to call them the hands-free log splitter when we first started, and then we just shortened that down to HF. So the HF 100 Mini goes on a mini skid, a stand-up skid steer, and that is good for 2 foot, 3 foot length logs. So if you're doing chunk wood only, the 100 Mini is a great tool for that. It's not going to work as good for the 8 foot, 10 foot logs. When you get into that range, you go to the HF 150, and that is a skid steer or mini excavator model that again has a replaceable tip. And we can make a bracket that'll mount that to a mini excavator. It comes standard with a skid steer bracket and hoses and quick couplers on the hoses. And then you, if you do have a mini excavator you want to run it on, we can just put a bracket on there. There's a bolting pattern. We can bolt the excavator bracket onto it. And that is good for a 6 to 8 foot long log. And diameter isn't as crucial as the length of a log, believe it or not. We're kind of the exact opposite of all other applications. We don't care about diameter so much. It plays effect, but the length of the log is really what dictates how much power, how much torque you need to bust that log, and wood species, of course. And then we step up from the 150 to the 300. The 300 again is a skid steer or mini excavator, MIDI excavator size log splitter. And it has a bigger motor and bigger gearbox, the exact same cone as the 150. And that's good for up to a 12-foot, 14-foot long log. And again, depending on species and stuff, you may, like, say a straight grained hardwood like red oak, you probably poke it once on the end and it'll split all the way to the other end. If it's a stringier material, you may have to back the cone out and move down halfway down that 12-foot log and finish the split, going back in that same crack and finishing it with a second poke for stringy fibrous type material. And then we go to the 800, and the 800 is our excavator model, and that goes on any size excavator, like a 15,000 to 40,000 pound excavators for busting full trees. And that's, like I say, more for the biomass and land clearing and mulch industry, where they're busting full trees to go through grinders more so than firewood processors.
Right. Now, a lot of cities do have what they call stump dumps, and they get the once the stumps are taken out by like bulldozers with those teeth on the bottom edge to separate them from the dirt, they bring them to the yard, and the stumps are way too big to go through a tub grinder. So you're saying you'll take like your Model 800 and bust up stumps too?
Yes, and it knocks the dirt and rocks out of the stumps while we do that. So when they go through the grinder, it's a much cleaner product coming out the other end. It's much easier on the grinders. And even a 1,000-horse grinder can't handle a stump much over 24 inches. And different parts of the country, you get stumps that are 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot easily all day long. So yeah, the stump dumps really like us. They don't know what to do with those stumps other than to have us come in and bust them with the cone splitters. It's a fast, efficient way to do it. So that is another area where we really shine for the 800 model.
Well, the firewood guys, we buy a processor, and the processor size you get determines the largest diameter, and there's a limit. There's no unlimited processors out there as far as I know. So you come to the point where the log is just too big. So you need some way to split it up. And the alternative to the cone splitter is to have a long cylinder splitter that might be on an I-beam. But one of the issues with it that I've seen is the fact that you've got to butt the log smaller. So what you do, the advantage you have on the cone is you can split the 12-foot log into a piece that's small enough to go on the processor, and you don't have to sit there and buck and buck and buck and buck.
Correct. And the 12-foot I-beam log splitters are extremely slow, extremely expensive, and they follow the grain of the log. I've run against them. I've been in races at shows where they put one of those against me with two giant logs, say, okay, who can get this done first? And the problem with the giant wedge, what I call the giant wedge or long wedge, is that it follows the grain. So it might go down 4 foot and the grain twists or turns and then it falls off and you shanked that log. You didn't split it clean through. I can follow that grain with my cone splitter all the way down and chase that grain. And I even made curly fries type logs where the tree twists on a fence row where they twist and twist, and I can follow that grain and it comes out like a curly cue, 20 foot or 12 foot or whatever length, but it's twisted all the way around. It's kind of fun.
Okay, well, let's look at, so this is your skid steer 150, which I assume it may be your most popular model.
Yeah, that and the 300 are our bread and butter. Yep, the 150 and 300, the price points are different, of course. So, but they're both a great machine. And for the firewood industry, the 150 and the 300 they are by far the best machines.
Well,
the other thing about a processor is you buy a processor, and like you say, there's a size limit, and the more you spend, the bigger the size limit, but you kind of max out at 21, 23 inches, no matter how much you spend. So you can buy a smaller processor and save a lot of money on the processor to buy a log splitter and then one of our cone splitters to break down that 24, 30, 36 inch log to go through that smaller processor.
Yep, I think that's true. So this is your 150 model. The next one here, it jumps up to 600. on an excavator.
Right. Yep. And the 300 is between there. The 300 is the blue one. It's in between the 150, and it looks very similar to the 150. The only big difference on the between the 150 and 300 is the motor and gearbox inside of it, and it has the 300 has a hinged frame for running other applications, to other things.
Well, one big advantage that I see when I've watched a lot of firewood processors, I videotaped them. They really struggle when you get into a lot of the knot clusters like you get in oak, especially if you're getting urban trees that are willow oak in particular. You have certain areas of that log that are just full of limb, the bases of limbs, and those do not go well through the processor. But if you split them up with your cone splitter, I think it makes it a lot easier. Not only is the size smaller, but you're breaking up not so many knots at one time.
Correct. It's funny because when you take that log and break it even in half, once you take the round out of it, the fight is over. Now the log is easy to split and easier to put through a processor, like you say, because it's not a full. I don't get the logistics of it, but once you break that log in half, it goes through processors or splits. The second split on my cone splitter is much easier, much faster once you break that full round in half.
Yeah. So really what you would do is you'd probably have a pile of the logs you need to hit with the cone splitter. You go through them, you got the skid steer with the cone, you do that whole batch, and then you take it off and you come back with your forks, and then you load them and run them through.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, what we're trying to do is talk about how you run a firewood business and how you make money doing it. What are we looking at here?
This was new last year. It's the 800 two-speed. So we have the excavator model we talked about. That's our biggest model. And we have a number of customers that have those, and they say, I love the 800, but I want to run it on a skid steer so I can take it to a land clearing or a landing or a yard or a job site and bust up the logs there, not to bring back full rounds. But it won't run on the skid steer because the 800 takes a lot more hydraulic pressure and flow that skid steers don't offer. So we designed the 800 two-speed. It's the same thing as the 800, same power, same torque, but it's got a two-speed motor, so it automatically downshifts when you get into a tough log, blows through it, and then speeds back up again to full speed. So it's just the best of both worlds. It can go on an excavator of any size, or it can go on a skid steer. And to give you an example, the 800 and 800 two-speed put out 15,000 foot-pounds of torque. It'll spin the skid steer around a stump. I've done it. If you get a stump in the ground, you screw that into it. If the stump don't split, the skid steer will actually skid around the outside of it in a circle.
Well, that just tells you how tough the stump is. Now, if you look at the log you've got there, that's the exact example I was saying. You got all these big log bases coming together. And if you split it like the ones on the right, you got a chance of going through a processor. But that log is too big to go through a processor, and it's just too ugly.
That's exactly what this application is. This is one of my customers, and this is their log yard for their firewood processing. Those that are on the right are going to be going through the firewood processor.
Okay, I think so. I'm going to get off the pictures here, and we'll talk. A couple quick questions here for you. Tell us about splitting short wood, like 24-inch wood. What's your ideas there?
So you could use the 100 mini or the 150 would be more than enough machine for doing that. They'd both be a great machine for busting what I call chunk wood or butt wood. And a couple of years ago, I was at a show and they had the firewood shootout. It was a race. They lined up all the firewood processors in a row and then threw me on the end. And they said, okay, you're going to race all the processors. I did a full cord of firewood in 11 minutes, 20 seconds by myself in the machine. I took third place in the race against teams of 5 and 8 guys with processors. But I was pretty pleased that I could crank out that much wood. It's, again, once you break that chunk wood, once you pop it once, it is so fast. It comes down to operator. How fast are you at going to the next block of wood? And the advantage is we don't have to wait for a reload. We're not waiting for the wedge or the cylinder to come back to make room for the split. As soon as that log splits, I'm reapplying the tip to the next chunk and going. I don't have to wait for anything. So it's fast and efficient. And again, by yourself.
Okay. Well, next year we're going to be in Wisconsin, and we hope you come over and help us out doing demos. You worked really hard when we were in Michigan. I think it was 2019 at our National Firewood Workshop, and you busted up some really big logs up there.
I love it. It's fun. It's fun doing shows where I get to live demo and play. It's people are just amazed at how fast and how big of stuff we can tackle.
Okay, so if I got a 10-foot large log and I've got your right cone for that log, what's a typical time to bust it up?
Less than a minute. I'll have it in 4 pieces. Yeah, I can usually half it in 30 seconds, and then hitting the other 2 pieces is, like I say, as fast as I can get the cone back on the log and going, and they crack a lot faster. So let's even say it's 2 minutes. That's overkill, but I can have a 24-inch, 10-foot long log in quarters in 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a lot quicker than bucking it up into short lengths and hitting it with the I-beam splitter. But any other advice you got for us here? We're trying to get out every smart idea we can to the firewood processing and support industries.
Well, just the speed and safety of it is my big thing. When we first come on the field 15 years ago, we would do shows and people would come up and say, "Oh, well, I can swing them all and I can do this, much faster than you can." And I said, "I got my 11-year-old daughter standing right here. I'll put her in this machine and you 3 guys can race her and we'll see who gets done first." It's just, anybody can run this machine. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a big person or strong. All you're doing is running the hydraulics in your carrier, skid steer or mini excavator or whatever. So it's safe for anybody to run. That's one of the big things I think is crucial.
Well, very good, Charlie. Thank you for being with us, National Firewood Workshop 2021, and we will hope to cross paths next year in Wisconsin.
Oh, looking forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.